What is up, lovely people? Welcome back to Blueprint Japan. My name is Osan, and you already know it's about time for the analytics. We just hit 12 followers on Spotify within the last 30 days. I am so happy. It's not even 30 days, it's like 20 days or something since this podcast started. We have over 50 downloads and streams across all platforms, so Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and a couple of more where I just put the RSS feed out there. Excuse me. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your support. And this is actually going to be the first episode of a new series where I sit down with people in my network who inspire me, who are a role model to me, and not because of what they do, but really because of who they are as a person and because of the way they do what they do. And so today's guest is a longtime friend, Anthony Griffin, who is, by the way, also one of my mentors, to me at least. He's a coach, a marketing expert, and a solo entrepreneur who has lived in Japan for almost 2 decades, going on 17 years. And we talk about what it takes to build a business abroad, especially in Japan, the emotional and cultural ups and downs, and what life profitability means, because I had never heard of that term before meeting Anthony, and making enough not to survive, but really to thrive in Japan. We dig into personal branding, navigating Japan's business culture, the power of relationships, very important, and also why sometimes, which I did for a very long time, doing unpaid work strategically can be a very, very high ROI. And so whether you are freelancing, starting your business, or you are just curious about this podcast in general, or entrepreneurship and solo entrepreneurship, I promise you there is something in this conversation. So yeah, having said that, I am getting started with my sponsorships. Again, I hit 50 downloads and streams. If I can help one person with my guests, that's already enough, enough accomplishment for me. So yeah, now I get to try my sponsorship voice. So here it goes. This episode is sponsored by Saga Consulting, a Tokyo-based brand that helps Japanese companies and professionals communicate more effectively with global audiences. Founded by today's guest, Anthony Griffin, M.B.A., Saga specializes in cross-cultural communication training and digital marketing services, all designed to support long-term international growth. I've had the chance to both work for and collaborate with Saga Consulting, and I can honestly say their attention to detail, consistency, and thoughtful approach make them a true asset to any business aiming to go global. To learn more and also to read one of my blog articles, visit consultsaga.com. That is consultsaga.com. And so just a quick heads up, the podcast starts very serious because, again, it was my first time having a guest on the podcast. I was nervous, but yeah, without further ado, let's go. Anthony, welcome to today's episode. I wanted to kick it off with a quote. The challenge lies in knowing your market and yourself well enough to see the truth. So, at one of your talks, you mentioned that working for yourself had always been a curious idea for you since grad school, but initially you took the safer path by working for a company. What changed that made you finally decide it was time to take the leap and start your own business?
Great question. If I could take a slightly different approach, I would have done it sooner. I just never had one of the most, if not the most important part of starting a business, which was an idea, a viable idea. So you and I, we're big fans of kind of traditional business models. Yep. We're doing things that we don't need to go and get investors or pitch people. We basically provide services that create value, and we get income, and we like to maintain cash flow and all those fundamentals that they used to teach back in the day. So if you are that kind of business person, you really need a good idea. You need something that the market values and will pay for. And the idea just never came, but I wanted to be self-employed or make something, create something. So the natural thing, of course, we need money. We need to grow our career. So we work. And it wasn't until I got to Japan and then the ideas started coming in. And so that was exciting. I was working for an English language instruction company as a business English instructor. That quickly elevated to, more of a coaching role and a training role. And in those roles, I got to meet, heads of companies in Japan, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and really listen to their needs, for example, as far as not so much language, but global business skills. How do you give a Western style presentation, for example? How do you manage a meeting? How do you network? Those kinds of things. So I kept my ears open, so to speak, and the idea started coming. And then when I got back into marketing at the American Chamber of Commerce, then I saw more needs. Companies needed social media management. They needed writers. People needed ghost writers. All of those were skills that I had and that I've been developing in the company space. And then finally, when I was ready to leave the chamber, it was a now or never moment. And I felt I had enough experience. And most importantly, there had been enough interest in the kind of work I was doing. In other words, the market was validated to a certain extent. So I knew there was a demand for what I was doing. What I didn't know is if there was enough demand to sustain my business. But fortunately, I had saved up a runway, which I recommend for everyone. So I had enough to give it a try. And if everything had fallen apart, I probably would be back in America by now. But fortunately, it didn't. So yeah, that's kind of a long roundabout answer to your question.
So I want to ask one thing that I feel like connects well to what you have mentioned. So you have worked but with major companies like Activision, some Fortune 500 companies through your time at Aeon, learning about Japanese business from the inside, basically. So what was one of the biggest cultural differences or challenges that surprised yourself when you were first started working here? And the reason why I'm asking is, Anthony, because everyone talks about success. I reached this and I scaled and we had millions of revenue this year and profit. So I want to take a step back and talk about the challenges, something that especially a sole proprietor might encounter.
Okay. Quick note. Activision was actually when I was in the States. So I did work for Activision. And I worked for Aeon. And through Aeon, I worked with, these Fortune 500 companies, these big brands and things like that. Cultural challenges. It's funny. I don't know if a lot of people will like this answer, but probably the biggest lesson I learned is that it's not always about cross-cultural challenges. If you're pretty open-minded, I find that corporate culture has been the biggest differentiator. So whether you're in America, Europe, Japan, every company has its own culture that might match you or might not fit you. So what are some examples of that? Japan is famous for having these, crazy long hours and, terribly long, hard work. They have this term called black companies where they just work you to the bone. They're definitely out there, but honestly, I worked the longest, most grueling hours when I was in America at one of my jobs in America, to be honest, where my first job here in Japan, it was challenging. And, especially as an instructor, it was physically tasking, but people were very understanding about, work-life balance and quality of life and things like that. So it's not a cultural challenge. It's just, what is your company culture, wherever you are in the world? I think that's the first step. Now there are, but then again, I thought of another example that's a corporate culture. So you could also say that Japanese companies, the large ones, they are seniority based instead of merit based, which means you can save the company money, you can make a huge difference, but because you are number 17 in line for promotion, you will never, you can't accelerate because of your merits. You just have to wait. But then again, in the US, if you work for the government, it's basically the same thing. So again, it's corporate culture. Now, one thing that does lead to, that can be a challenge, depending on the Japanese company you join, you may face the, gaikokujin glass ceiling, the glass ceiling for foreigners. So you might end up at a company where if you're a foreigner, you just won't have an opportunity or won't have as many opportunities to be a manager. Even if you know Japanese, even if you understand the culture, it's not written in the company books or the employee handbook, but you'll know it when you hit it. So yeah, to answer your question about culture, that would be something to look out for. And, do your best, work hard, add value, do well. But when you feel that ceiling coming, be ready to move on to the next thing.
My previous employer, my working hours, we have been in touch for the last 5 years or so. And one thing that I realized was working in Switzerland demands more mental and physical strength and energy than it does in Japan.
Oh, really?
And oh yes, because we don't really have the 9 to 5. So we usually start to work at 8.
Okay.
And then we finish by 6.
Okay.
So we do have quite long hours.
Yeah.
And then you have to leave your house by 7 to get to your working place.
Sure.
Because our trains are, not that fast. And sometimes you have to change multiple trains and buses. If you want to go by car, it takes you a long time because traffic in Zurich is miserable.
Okay.
It's terrible.
Okay.
So if you want to drive 5 kilometers, it's going to take you an hour in the morning.
It sounds like LA.
It's crazy. I haven't been to LA, but
pretty much the same, downtown to LA to Santa Monica, just like that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So half of your energy is already gone in the first hour before you get to work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Because, as I mentioned, LA is the same way. I've been there, done that, working in the game industry at that time. I worked in Santa Monica, and I like how you phrased it. You're burned out before you come in the front door. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I have a transition quote for this one.
Okay.
No brand, no reputation, no points of differentiation in a country where brands are everything. You might know where this stems from, but one thing that obviously to me stood out from your journey was entering Japan, where you had no personal brand or track record, yet within 8 months, you achieved something you call life profitability with a wait list for projects. Now, Anthony, what is life profitability and how did you build that momentum, especially in Japan, in the market where face and social proof are everything?
Great question. And to clarify too, those were the first 8 months after I started working for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, there were 7, 8 years of working for companies and building up, my personal brand, networking and all that. So all that was underneath those first or supporting or propping up those 8 months that it took me to achieve life profitability when I started working for myself. So I don't want to paint the picture of, overnight success or anything like that, because it was anything but. There was a solid 8 years of striving and, brand building, networking, working hard. And that was the foundation, so that when I did start working for myself, there, were clients in place. There were people I could reach out to. So that's incredibly important to mention. Now, life profitability, what that means is making enough income to not only turn a profit in your business, but to support your life, to pay your rent, to buy food, entertainment, and then have some money to put away in the bank. So for the type of work that we do, writing, creative work, or, work that others might do, like photography, coding, it's not hard to run a profitable business. You can start as a sole proprietor, which means you do not need an office. You don't need any expensive government certificates or anything like that. Your overhead is incredibly low, and you can start doing the work really quickly. So if you factor that in, if you look at it from a purely business standpoint, these kinds of businesses can turn a profit really quickly. But as a sole proprietor, you are your business. So sure, if you look at just your business expenses, you're profitable, but can you pay your rent consistently? Can you, have a little fun when you want to? Can you socialize? Can you live your life? And so that's what life profitability is, at least for a sole proprietor, is, can your business, whatever it is, generate enough so you don't feel compelled to work for another company to stay alive and enjoy your life. And fortunately with Saga Consulting, it took about 8 months for that to happen. Yeah.
That's pretty fast. I know you have had the foundation,
Right.
the companies and big names out there that, your experiences, but still I feel like it all comes down to your personal brand, because only because you have this foundation doesn't mean that those companies or those brands, those people want to become your client, right? Only because you have like a good relationship doesn't mean that they want to do business with you.
Okay.
So I feel like that is a skill that you mastered or had maybe from early on. And it's, to me, Anthony, it's amazing how you turned the very early stages of Saga Consulting into a profitable business by just being yourself. Because 8 months is a really short period of time.
Okay.
And by then, Japan wasn't, the economy was a little bit better than it is today, I feel like.
I'd say a lot better, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in bringing up the point about the economy. It was a lot better back then, bar none. So that was a nice boost. But that being said, too, you need to have a personal brand. But I think what's more important is what's powering that brand, what's underneath that. And for me, and for anyone, it's doing the work and doing what you say you're going to do. What does that mean? So, whatever your skill is, photographer, designer, coder, all the usual suspects, I noticed, okay, I might go on a bit of a tangent here, but
yeah, please.
this was just a moment I'll never forget. So, when I was trying to hire writers and photographers when I was at the American Chamber of Commerce, one of the most shocking things to me was that so many people applied for the position of graphic designer or photographer or writer. And in the single digits percentage wise, only, single digit percentage wise did people have a portfolio to show me what they could do. Less than 10% of the people, and that's generous. So they were applying for these positions I was putting out there, and I had no idea how to judge what they would do. So that meant the people that had a portfolio that were actually doing the work, they were naturally shortlisted. And the person that we eventually hired, she had, a fantastic portfolio. So we knew what we were getting. So, yes, you've got to be a decent person, but I don't think you can look at someone and just say, I need to behave like him or be like him. You can only be yourself. But what you can do is start doing the work. So as soon as I arrived in Japan, I kept writing. Even though most of my time I spent teaching, I was still marketing, I was still writing. And so I was producing things. I was writing about my travels. I was helping to create marketing materials for my company. On occasion, I was creating business materials to teach, so people could always see what I was doing, even whether or not I was making money for it. And so when the easiest way to get clients is to make to put things out in the world, write, design, put it out there, and people will look at that and say, "Can you do that for me?" And then the business comes, even if it's a little bit. So. To be honest, there are a handful of Saga Consulting clients that found me within 2 years of me arriving. And I served them in a freelance capacity back then. And in fact, the first company that hired me in Japan, they authorized me to freelance to help their subsidiary with some graduate school coaching and things like that. And they said, you know what? We authorize you to work outside your regular hours, make your own contract, go down to the tax office and do what you have to do. And that's what taught me how to, do a side hustle in Japan. So in summary, yes, you've got to be a decent person. That helps a lot. But you got to put work out into the world so people can see what you do. And if you do that over time, you're going to get feedback. And I constantly go to these books. There's 2 books that you might want to check out, that really nail these concepts. Number 1 is Show Your Work. And I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's Aston Kleon. It's something like that. The second one is The Lean Startup as well. And those books teach you either on the individual level or the sole proprietor level or even the corporate level, how to get things out in the world and get feedback on it.
So would you say, basically, because how I started my basically freelance or proprietorship career in Tokyo, my first website offered your first project will be free.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Because I feel like at that time, you have to be your own sponsor. So you basically do projects for free to nail down that portfolio.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad so glad you brought that up because there's a nuance. Let's talk about that. There's 2 camps in this. There's a hardliners that say never work for free. It devaluates your work and all of that. And then there's the people on the other side that say, hey, if you're just starting out, you need to do some free projects. I think I like to refine that. And let's say if you don't have a portfolio, definitely offer to do free work to build that portfolio. The catch is you got to be strategic about it. So, there's all kinds of clients. Some clients will fully trust in your expertise and let you create something beautiful that can be a portfolio piece. Other clients, they may just want you to do the work and they'll take your work, which they have every right to do, and they'll alter it, change it, kind of adjust it to how they want to do it. And those might not be good portfolio pieces. So if you're going to try this approach of doing free work to build a portfolio, it's great that you had it on your website,
Mm.
but I think it's also important to seek out clients that you're interested in and approach them, because then you're going to produce your best work. So, for example, to give a concrete example, I'm one of my most popular, I don't want to say products, but kind of writing styles is this interview format where I interview entrepreneurs or people doing interesting things and then publish the interview. I got experience in that, not because I was hired out of the blue to do it. One day, well before I was working on my own, I just met a fascinating person, and the idea just popped into my head. I'm like, I'm a writer. This person is doing something incredibly fascinating. I wonder if they'll be willing to let me write up an interview about them just for my LinkedIn page or something, no money involved. And so fortunately they agreed. And through this process and a few other people, I learned how to write those interviews. And then a few years later, I'm actually earning a living doing that kind of thing. So, you're right on target, Ozan, with that strategy. I just want to boost it a little bit and just tell people, seek out things that are interesting to you and then make the proposal.
Yep. So I actually took down that website and I made a new website where that proposal is not there anymore.
Okay.
But it's a whole new like design and everything. And it's a different provider, different brand name. But yeah, I feel like, because when I came here the first time, it was really tough to find basically like clients, because no one would trust you.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, well, do you have a portfolio? Well, I worked for my employer, yes.
Yeah.
But that's not really, you had always the same brand, voice, tone, same guidelines. So that's not really your, capabilities, what you can deliver. So I was like, okay, why not? And then I actually started writing for free. And then eventually, one company approached me because I commented on LinkedIn. I saw one article of that company and I was like, hey, I have a similar experience. Like if you want to hear my side of the story, let me know. And to my surprise, and that person, that company, but to my surprise, they reached out to me on LinkedIn and they were like, hey man, we saw your comment, let's hop on a call. And that led to the second one and then to the, the third one and so on. So you're right.
There it is. Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, I don't think you need the free offer out in your website anymore because you've already produced so much content. There's so many places, including on my website, where people can see your work. And that's why I asked you to write content for me, is because I saw what you were doing somewhere else. So that visibility is there. And another thing I want to add is, hopefully if, you're listening to this and you're in a similar creative space that we're in, writing or design or something, you've got to like what you do, which means you should be writing, your own blog or designing your own work, or just doing that by default when you have free time. Now, granted, if you're working 14 hours at a Black company that we mentioned earlier, then you might not have so much time, but hopefully you can at least put out some content once a month at the minimum. And sometimes that's all it takes, is even if it's work that you've just done for yourself, someone might see it and say, I want that. And I can tell you right now, writing, this happens to me, frequently enough, but even on things that are not officially one of my product lines. So for example, when I was just getting started, someone saw my website, which I just built on a Squarespace. I'm not a designer, but fortunately I've managed designers and I've worked with designers and helped, help them with business. And so, I just took what I knew, what I learned from those experiences to make my website. And someone looked at it and said, I want that. And I said, well, I don't usually make websites. but you made yours. I want that. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll look into it and get you an estimate, based on what I think I could do. And fast forward, that they became a client, not for writing or coaching or anything like that, but I built their Squarespace website for them. And that was simply because I had mine out there. So, to add on top of that, if you're passionate about what you do, you should be doing it by default just for yourself. And that's the first step in people seeing what you're capable of.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I know that there are a lot of emotions involved in this whole process. So, and as I want to say, can I say business owner? I know the technicalities that you probably want to answer with, but to me, it is a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, I like to say brand owner, but as a sole proprietor. So for the audience knows, that's why we go back and forth about this. But Ozan, I'm going to give this one to you because when I look at the business tax bills that I receive in my mail, then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm getting this, then yeah, you could call me a business owner because I'm certainly paying for it. So yeah, sorry.
I win.
you win. You win thanks to the Shinjuku tax office there. But sorry, I got sidetracked.
Perfectly fine. So as a business owner, that entrepreneurship is oftentimes seen as very glamorous. But to me, what we are doing has a lot of emotional highs and lows.
Yeah.
So can you maybe share one moment when you question whether you can continue like that, whether you have made the right choice regarding a client or a project? Because I can imagine anyone listening, hopefully listening, they might be in the very early stages of their brand and business. So they might have some, questions regarding that.
Yeah. For me, it doesn't happen in moments. I think anyone working for themselves, this happens when you're not having a great quarter or a great year, or something happens and you didn't earn as much as you did the previous year, for example. In my case, the pandemic recovery year, so I guess last year, basically, when Japan was coming out of it, that was actually my second hardest year since I started. The pandemic actually was quite good for me, maybe because of the government stimuli that was given to companies. They had extra money to spend. They couldn't work so much on their core business because of whatever restrictions. So a lot of companies actually invested in digital marketing, which is counterintuitive. You think, okay, we have this scary thing happening. Let's not spend any extra money on marketing or training or things like that. But it didn't work out that way. But then, we previously mentioned Japan's economy right now, and 2023, you would think that the economy would accelerate, but there was a huge amount of uncertainty going on. The inflation had started. So whenever you go through periods like that, I think it's totally natural to question, what you're doing. And, I'm human. I certainly questioned it, but the longer I do this, the harder it is to imagine doing anything else. So for me, I'm going to keep pushing through as long as I could, but the early days are the hardest because when you first start, especially if you're a sole proprietor or trying to turn a side hustle into a full-time gig, you could almost treat that like job hunting. You're halfway working on your business, but you also have one eyeball on the job boards or, a phone call with a recruiter here and there. That's the most sensitive time. And it's totally natural. So yeah, the beginning and whenever you hit a slump, those are the times where you kind of have to question yourself.
Yeah. And I think that is a huge challenge for any, at least young entrepreneur, solopreneur, whatever preneur, because you have to stay patient.
Yeah.
And that was one of your first advices to me, Anthony. You said, be patient, excel at your day job, and don't burn bridges.
Amen.
That was your first advice. I followed that through and through. But I want to ask you, what do you mean by that for anyone who's tuning in, and how did those, 3 pillars basically help you achieve what you're doing today?
Well, I think the don't burn your bridges advice is universal. I don't see any advantage to that, so just don't do it. And if I need to put a practical explanation to that, if you don't burn bridges and you excelled at your work, your previous employers are very likely to become your first clients. So, for example, if you're working full time and you do a great job, let's say you're doing something like you're a writer or a programmer, your previous employer is probably still going to need those skills when you're gone. They might have trouble replacing you, and they can make a contract with you. Companies can. You don't have to work full time, be glued to the desk 9 to 5 or 9 to 10 or whatever. So if you keep a good relationship with your previous employers, they can become your first clients. And that's the easiest way to start a business. So it's not just that burning your bridges is a bad thing. If you keep good relationships, you can start your business. That was one of them. The being patient, that's mostly related to Japan. That's just the speed of business here. It takes time to build trust. You need to prove yourself, especially if you're a foreigner. Again, you're an unknown entity to most. You might as well be from another planet. So, imagine if an alien came to your neighborhood, you're probably not going to, rush up and say, hey, can we do business? Well, maybe some people will, but, you got to think of it that way. So the being patient part means basically business is not going to fall in your lap here. You're going to have to build relationships. You're going to have to prove that you're trustworthy. Some people don't like that. Some people might complain about it, but the bottom line is it's a fact. And if you want to thrive here, we have to deal with facts. If that's not comfortable for you, then, you might want to consider other cultures where the speed of business happens faster. And that is one cool thing about America is I think the roadmap to starting a business and, getting income faster, I think it's well-traveled. There's a lot of things online, a lot of techniques that you can go to move faster. But if you really want to stay in Japan, you're going to have to do things a little differently.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'm so bad at being patient. Like Anthony, I cannot tell you, because I'm someone, I like open and transparent communications.
Sure.
Now that is something, if you're waiting for an answer or for people to follow up and it doesn't come, and then you follow up and you go like, hey, how's it looking? Is this meeting going to happen? Is this project going to happen? And they keep pushing it, 1 week after another to the back. It's like, if you don't want the project to happen, just tell me. Because I don't like to be patient when I know there's nothing going to come back.
True.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but let me pose another alternative to what that might be. That, and again, I don't know the details. I'm just putting this idea out there. I mean, you could be getting the Japanese no if this potential client is Japanese, and we all know that they're not going to tell you culturally. You're not going to be told a direct no. So you have to figure out or make an educated guess. Am I receiving the indirect Japanese no? And then if so, you can just let it go or work away on something else. And if you're wrong and this organization realizes they need your services, they'll come back to you. That's another thing that I've learned is it's really about, being top of mind when someone has a problem that you can solve. And to me in Japan, it takes time to get in that position. But some of my biggest clients, they didn't come from some, door knocking or email sending or cold calling. I was just, maybe someone attended a free LinkedIn seminar that I gave or some presentation. They liked it. They came up, they talked with me. A few months later, we got some coffee. A few months after that, we got to know each other over lunch, dinner. And 1 or 2 years later, by that time, they had a clear understanding of what I did. And this is someone who worked at a huge corporation. One day after maybe 2 years of just hanging out, getting to know each other, he had a serious problem at work that needed some copywriting, and he was in a bind. But because I was on top of mind, I popped into his head as a solution. And that's next thing I know, they became an amazing client. So that's what I mean by patient. Sometimes you can't force it. And, you got to be busy. So in the interim, you need to have other things going on that you can work on. So you're not stressing out over one client. So, but yeah, that could be going on too. Maybe they need to get to know you better. Or it could be the Japanese no. And if it's a Japanese no, just keep, working on other things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe for people who just, recently came to Japan, if you ever hear それは難しいです, just know it's a no.
Right.
Just accept it. There's no, nothing to be emotional about. It's straightforward no, basically.
Exactly. And that's my favorite example of the Japanese no. To translate, if someone tells you it's difficult, that means no. So you don't ask, well, how do I make it easier? Why is it difficult? You don't say that. You just say, thank you very much. I understand. And you leave it at that. So yeah.
There's a fun story to that. How I learned that it's difficult meant no in Japan.
Oh, do tell.
Last year, I wanted to reserve for 10 people. It was a huge crowd. And I called. And I was like, can we have a table for 10?
Okay.
And he said, well, it's difficult.
Oh.
And I was like, so we can make 2 tables, 5. They really asked. I was like, can we make 2 tables? Is that okay? And they were like, that's gonna be difficult. So I was like, we might be 8. Is that okay? And it was still difficult.
Uh-oh.
And then I talked to my friends, and they were like, no, it's a no. So what we did, Anthony, we walked past that place because we had to reserve another place in nearby. It was empty. It was empty. Yeah, and we knew the location. They have a big table, kind of like this one, for easily for 10 people, maybe double the size. But it was empty.
Wow.
And that was something that I think did not understand by them. But yeah, so to close this episode, basically, I want to ask you, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about starting a business or a brand in Japan, or in Tokyo specifically, what would that advice be?
Whew. You hit me with the deep question right at the end. I'll do my best. I'll probably when I'm on the train going back home tonight, I'll probably think, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said something better. But who am I in Tokyo? On the surface, I'm a marketer, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach who helps Japanese organizations and individuals communicate and market to the world. So, of course, beyond that, I'm a lover of cycling. So I'm out on the bike every week. I love studying and speaking Japanese. So I'm studying Japanese every day, still 15 years in. But, incremental improvement, I guess, as well. And I just love being in Japan. So I'm a big fan of Japan as well. Of course, there's more to it than that, but I'll stop there. As far as advice, I I mean, I need to tell my younger self a million things. So many mistakes and missteps and things like that. But as far as life in Japan or finding my way here, and I've said this before, and this is going to sound shallow, but it's the truth. I would have told my younger pre-Japan self, study up on, immigration and tax laws before you come here. But more importantly than that, as far as starting a business or working for oneself, I would have told myself to do it more confidently. What do I mean by that is, as I mentioned earlier, in the early stages of becoming a sole proprietor, we're often a little bit lost. We're not sure, can we do this? Should I work? And, I was like that as well. I wasn't 100% sure if it was time to do this or move on to the next job. And the problem with that is, going back to not burning bridges, I think I probably gave my notice at the chamber maybe 3 months before I left. And so I had 3 months where I could have confidently said, I'm going to start something. And that could have gathered even more supporters and, friends and customers and clients. But instead, I didn't really have a confident answer. I'm like, I might, do something for myself, or I might work somewhere else, or, and no one wants to hear that. People want to cheerlead for you and support you. So that's probably the most important thing I would tell my younger self is, even if you are worried about failure, still start off more confidently, decide for sure you're going to do it, and give it your all. I got lucky. Things have worked out so far, but the start could have been so much better.
Yeah. It can always be better, but I wouldn't say you were lucky. I think you whatever you did just came back like maybe twice, 3 times more positively, more, rewardingly, if that's even a word. But yeah, thank you so much, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. That is very kind of you. Luck is always a factor, but that being said, I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah. See you next episode.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ozan.
Thank you, Anthony. So that's a wrap on today's conversation with Anthony Griffin. If there's one thing to take away, it's following. Building a business, especially in a place like Japan, is about patience, is about self-awareness, and is about showing up consistently for the work you believe in. I hope Anthony and Anthony's journey gave you some practical insights and maybe even the push you needed to take the next step on your own path, whether that's freelancing, starting something new, or, just shifting how you think about life and work. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone wants to start but is kind of like stuck in whatever they are doing. And yeah, stay tuned for more honest conversations, real conversations with people doing meaningful work across cultures and businesses and industries. And again, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening until the end. And yeah, see you in the next one. Osan, stay curious, stay humble. Let's go.